So, Nosferatu, the latest film from our man Robert Eggers. Let's just go through the main premise of this film real quickly. Nosferatu is a remake of the 1922 film Nosferatu, A Symphony of Horror, a German film based on Bram Stoker's 1897 book Dracula. The film takes place in Germany in 1838 and begins with Thomas Hutter, a newlywed real estate agent, married to Ellen Hutter, a young woman stricken with loneliness and depression. The two are struggling to make their ends meet, but are intensely faithful and devoted to one another. One day, Thomas is sent to a castle in Transylvania to meet a mysterious client, Count Orlok. Little does he know, Orlok is a vampire, and his arrival in Hutter's hometown sets off a horrifying chain of events.
I was really excited about this one. Somewhere between a 7 and an 8 in terms of how much I was looking forward to it.
That's pretty high.
But before I say anything, I'm curious what you thought about the film. Did you like it?
In terms of the visuals, everything was pretty much flawless. I think this might be the best looking Eggers film that I've seen so far, from beginning until the end. Whether it's the costumes, the sets, the overall production design, the stark contrasting lighting, the film aesthetic, you can tell that Eggers did everything in his power to make this film feel absolutely stunning at every moment. Not only is it just beautiful to look at from start to finish, the dedication to making that analog quality feel real is so strong here. I read that they actually used 5,000 live rats to shoot some of the scenes. That's gotta be just one of the countless insane things they had to do to make this world feel and as great as it did.
I agree. I do think this is one of the best looking Eggers film that he's made. And you liked all the actors' performances?
Yeah, they were all solid. Lily Rose Depp really puts on a show of a lifetime for everyone here. There are so many different emotional notes that she has to hit, whether it's just being herself, being absolutely terrified, or just going fully berserk in one of her fits. All of the performances were really great, and you could tell that everyone was bringing their A game at every moment. For some reason, though, I really liked Aaron Taylor Johnson's performance of his character Friedrich Harding. He delivers something really special, and the way he composes himself and has that sort of restrained sense of love that he clearly has for his family, I thought was really interesting. He's been great in other more action-based roles like in Bullet Train or Kingsman, but I think I really appreciated his acting chops for what they were for the first time here. It was nice to see Ralph Ineson and Willem Dafoe in this film as well. We saw Ineson first in Eggers' film The Witch as the father character, and Dafoe having become the Eggers regular now, with him in The Lighthouse and in The Northman. I can't get enough of seeing Dafoe as a mad scientist now, my first time being in Spider-Man and the second time in Poor Things. I knew that I was going to see some freaky stuff when going into the theater, and this was a horror film that wasn't too scary for me personally. It definitely is a horror film in all aspects, from the way it builds suspense and shows these grotesque images, but I didn't find them too intensely scary. I think it's somewhere between a Jordan Peele movie and Ari Aster movie in terms of level of scariness. So I would recommend this movie to someone who's usually not used to watching a horror movie, but is interested in challenging themselves just a little bit.
So you like the visuals, the performances, and the horror aspect of it all. How about the story?
The one thing that didn't work as well for me at the beginning was the pacing. Personally, the pacing in the first act made it really hard for me to care about the characters. But eventually, once the plot got going, I was hooked. But yeah, a little more time building their dynamic would have helped. I get that Eggers leans towards mood and atmosphere, but the relationship between Thomas and Ellen could have used more depth to make the stakes feel higher.
I see what you mean. I would agree that it might have felt difficult to emotionally connect with these main characters, given how quickly we are thrown into the main events of the film.
Alright, so what did you think about the film then?
I thought, for some reason, since his previous film The Northman, director Robert Eggers' way of storytelling has changed in some ways. The Northman was pretty straightforward in terms of the narrative compared to his more enigmatic films he made before. And maybe that was intentional, considering the sheer scale of The Northman's production. This film felt more like Eggers returning to his comfort zone in a more art house-friendly way of filmmaking, but also delivering in a way that felt more accessible than The Witch or The Lighthouse. I heard that Eggers didn't have final cut when finishing The Northman, which is a real shame, but this film felt like he was more in control of what he wanted to do here.
That's interesting. I would agree that The Northman was something that felt more simple in terms of character and plot, while Nosferatu definitely leaned a bit more towards the art house vibes. I guess this is more something that can be explained emotionally than by logic.
What you just said actually flows right into our next topic, the central ideas of German Expressionism.
Yeah, can you also fill me in with that? German Expressionism, and how this art movement played an important role in shaping this film. I noticed the shadows in some of the dramatic visuals in the movie, but I'm not super familiar with the movement as a whole.
Sure thing. German Expressionist cinema was an artistic movement in the 1920s that focused more on the artist's inner subjective emotions than an accurate scientific depiction of reality. The movement used exaggerated sets, dramatic lighting, and surreal visuals to evoke intense emotions and atmosphere. Films like Metropolis, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, And of course, the original Nosferatu pushed boundaries with their distorted, dreamlike aesthetics. These films often depicted surreal, twisted realities, reflecting the inner turmoil of the characters. It was hugely influential on horror and noir cinema. But just to bring it back to what I thought about the film, I thought it was a fascinating addition to Eggers' filmography, and overall really enjoyed it. I think I'll likely watch it again in the near future to see how it fares with the other Eggers films. We're now going to do some spoiler talk, so if you haven't seen the film yet, but interested in seeing our final scores, be sure to skip this part of the video and go straight to the ending.
Okay, so now let's dive into some spoilers. Anything specific you want to get into here?
I just want to talk a little bit more about German Expressionism, and how understanding the movement is important to better understand his film.
Fire away.
Most of all, I think it's important to note how Eggers pays direct homage to the original spirit of German Expressionism in the film. Its historically groundbreaking aesthetics aside, German Expressionism was also seen as the reflection of disillusionment of the Enlightenment, a philosophical movement that celebrated rationality, scientific understanding, and human progress. But eventually, the Enlightenment worldview began to face critiques, and artists responded by going against the ideas of the Enlightenment, by accepting subjective, distorted perspectives and the irrational, such as chaos, dreams, and the unconscious. The German Expressionist spirit of the film is particularly highlighted when Willem Dafoe's character mentions at one point, "We are not so enlightened as we are blinded by the gaseous light of science."
Right. And in the story itself, the whole quote-unquote rational world around Ellen telling her that she's gone mad throughout most of the movie, but eventually people slowly begin to accept that there are things in the world that cannot be explained by science or reason.
Exactly. They either accept their ignorance of the darkness, or pay the price for their unwillingness to embrace the unknown. This film has been Eggers' dream project for years, and it makes complete sense. The thematic exploration of a subjective, distorted inner reality, and the desire for forbidden knowledge can be seen in his previous films, and these ideas may have been influenced by Eggers' love for German Expressionism, so it makes complete sense for Eggers to recreate Nosferatu, and pay his sincere homage to the very movement that's inspired and shaped him throughout his entire career.
I just want to talk a little bit more about Ellen for a second. I really appreciated how the character of Ellen was developed. She had a stronger sense of agency than one could have expected, despite mostly being bedridden for most of the runtime. I'm really glad that she was a key player in putting an end to all the shenanigans in the story.
Right. This also ties in with another theme of myth that Eggers often explores in his films, which is the Dionysian myth. The Dionysian myth involves the idea of women being the religious and spiritual leaders of societies. Like Thomasin in The Witch, Ellen plays a critical role as a spiritual medium to the darkness who must confront Nosferatu himself. Ellen's decision at the end felt both heroic and heartbreaking. It ties into Eggers' recurring theme of characters who sacrifice everything for a greater purpose.
Yeah, she admits to what she's done and just takes the consequences of her actions like a champ. So much respect.
Also, with the light shining on Orlok at the end, it can't help but remind you of the role of the light in the lighthouse, right?
Oh, definitely. That light was the brightest thing in the entire film, and you really felt it, just like how blinding the light was in the lighthouse. All that effort just to get this vampire into the morning light. Sheesh.
Also, it was interesting how Orlok was really shown mostly shrouded in darkness, but also how he was mostly represented through his hands. They were the defining physical characteristic on a visual sense, while his unique voice and accent defined him on an auditory sense.
Yeah, that voice work must have been so hard to nail on every try. But yeah, I cannot forget that one shot with the shadow of Nosferatu's hand looming over the city. 10 out of 10.
In terms of the direction, Eggers' talents as a director definitely shines when delivering atmospheric tension and evoke that sense of ecstatic madness. When it comes to that sort of direction involving religious madness and horror, Eggers is one of the very best working today, I think.
Oh, for sure. Especially in those moments when the movie cuts between Orlok and Ellen, as well as in those other moments where that banging sense of horror needs to be delivered. I'm a fan of going off the wall crazy when it comes to that kind of madness, but sadly we didn't really get to see as much here compared to something like The Lighthouse. But the story didn't really call for such levels of craziness, so I understand it.
So, final thoughts? What's your verdict on this one?
I liked it, but it didn't fully click for me until halfway through. Still, it's worth watching, especially for fans of Eggers. What about you?
I say this is a film that rewards patience. It's atmospheric, haunting, and rich with themes, but I suppose it might not be for everyone.
What about you guys? Did Nosferatu live up to the hype? Or did it leave you wanting more? Let us know in the comments.
And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more reviews and discussions. Thanks for watching!